Okay, so first of all, I am recreational runner, but tonight I'm cheating. I came out on the bike, light's going rapidly, so I wanted to get out somewhere, get a little bit further before the light completely disappears. Hopefully you can see all right. Great view down there. So in today's video, it's about planning your route, and I've got 10 tips for planning your route. If you're a beginner, you may be a little bit nervous about going out for your first run or your first few runs, not knowing where to go, not knowing how safe you're going to be, that kind of thing. So I've got 10 tips that will hopefully help you, and I've broken them down into two categories actually. And the first one is staying safe, and the second one is just making sure you have some fun on your route. So tip number one, under the banner of safety, is know your route. Plan your route in advance. There's nothing worse than just opening your door and going out and not really having an idea of where you're going to go. You need to plan your route. Use something like Google Maps or Strava if you're using that app. There's loads of different mapping software that you can look at. If you know your area, obviously if you've lived there a while, then you hopefully know some good routes anyway. But know your route so you don't get lost and you don't waste time, and you don't risk getting injured and not knowing where you are or something like that. That's tip number one. Tip number two for me is tell someone else where you're going and when you're going. You may live with someone, which would be ideal. You can tell them you're going out and you should be back in half an hour. Or if you live on your own, then just let a relative or a friend know and ask them to check in on you in half an hour's time or 40 minutes time, just for that extra bit of safety if you're nervous about going out the first time or the first few times. That's my tip number two. Let someone else know where you're going and what time you should be back. And tip number three for me is ice. Not in-car entertainment, I did that when I was a boy racer. Ice in terms of in case of emergency. Carry something on you that can identify you and give people an emergency contact number in case you get into some kind of difficulty and you're not able to speak. That's, again, you know, don't panic about this stuff, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I've got one of these little parkrun bands I got off the parkrun website, mainly for the barcode, so you can scan it when you do a park run. But on here, I've got my name, I've got my girlfriend's telephone number, and I've got a little label that says no medical conditions. So I'm not allergic to anything, I've got no allergies, I'm not allergic to penicillin or any other drugs as far as I'm aware. So in case of emergency, it could be a piece of laminated paper in your pocket, it could be one of these bands, it could be anything really. It could also be your mobile phone. If you are happy, comfortable taking your mobile phone out for a run and you have that on you, that gives you direct access back to people. It also prevents you from getting lost because you can access maps, but other people can also hopefully access your phone as well. So in case of emergency, contact details. My tip number four in the safety category would definitely be stay reasonably close to home. You know your route from tip number one. The best thing to probably do as a beginner, and remember we're doing low heart rate or low intensity perceived effort running for 30 minutes, and that might be walking for large parts of it, as I've said before. But know your route, number one. Number four, stay reasonably close to home. A good thing to do is 15 minutes out and then just turn around and retrace your steps, and then that's your half an hour done when you get back. You might even find you get back a bit quicker, so you can just do a little loop around the block or something. But tip number four is stay reasonably close to home. And that brings me on to tip number five, which would be stay close to people, built up areas. At the minute you can see I'm in the middle of nowhere. He says, pointing his camera straight at a house over there, the other side of the field. But if you're worried about feeling vulnerable and being out somewhere on your own and not feeling safe, then stay in a built-up area. Stay in a place where you know there's plenty of people around. So should you need help, there's someone nearby that can give it to you. Tip number five, stay close to people. Other than social distancing. Stay close to people, but no closer than 2 meters. And my final tip in the safety section is tip number six, and that's go out in daylight. Don't be like me and come out when it's probably going to be dark soon. When I turn around and head back on the bike, I haven't got lights, but I've got high vis on. I've got high vis on, I should say. So yeah, if you're new to running and you're nervous about going out for the first few times, then my advice is make sure you do it in the middle of the day. Stay out of the hot weather if it's hot, if you can, but avoid dusk and avoid going out early in the morning when it's dark. Again, just to reduce the level of anxiety through vulnerability that you might feel. Tip number six, run in the daylight. Sorry to make you jump. Now let's talk about the fun elements, okay? The safety stuff is there as precaution for you. It depends how you feel and how anxious you are and how vulnerable you feel. You may not feel any of that at all, which is great, but these are things that you can just help to alleviate that and make sure you stay safe. But tip number 7 is fun, and it's scenery. Pick a route, if you can, with all of the things I've already said taken into consideration. But if you can get out somewhere like this, that you're still close to people, you're still close to buildings and houses. It might just be the local park, it might be the local canal or river or reservoir or lake or whatever, or pond. Just somewhere that's nice to look at, because you're going low intensity, so you can take in your surroundings. And if you're just running around an industrial estate or a housing estate, that can get a little bit mentally boring. And it can you start thinking about the run too much. Whereas when you've got nice scenery to look at, it's a lot more fun, trust me. So tip number 7 is find something scenic on your run. Sunset over there. Look at that. Scenery. All about the scenery. So tip number 8 for me, and we're still in the fun category, remember, is different terrains. If you can, when you're new, and find a nice safe route that's got different underfoot terrain. And by that I mean not just sticking to pavements and roads where the concrete is very unforgiving. And as a new runner, you won't be used to it. And the more you pound the pavements and the concrete generally, the more kind of delayed onset muscle soreness you're going to get, ligament soreness and all that kind of stuff. So if you can, and it's safe to do so, run in the local park, find a trail nearby that's got a nice, more forgiving ground underneath. But precaution with this is obviously make sure it's safe to do so. Make sure you've adhered to everything else I've just said. You don't want to be in the middle of nowhere like I am now, and then twist an ankle because the surface is uneven or something. So as long as it's safe to do so, mix up the terrain. Definitely in the summer, run on the grass in your local park, because it's just better for you and it's nicer. You'll enjoy your run a lot more. So tip number 8, mix up the terrain a bit. So we're into the last 2 tips now. Tip number 9. Now this one's an interesting one because I like hills. Tip number 9 is minimize the hills on your route, just for your enjoyment factor really, because if there are lots of hills on your route, you might start to struggle, you might start to feel a bit fatigued, and it might put you off the whole running experience. So if you can, I know lots of people living in hilly areas, but if you can, pick a reasonably flat route because you'll just enjoy it, it'll be more fun. However, that said, hills are fantastic training, and if you do go on an out and back, go out up a hill, because when you turn around, the fun factor is you're going to come back down the hill and you're going to feel great on the way back down. But please be careful, don't go flat out on the way back down, you've still got to stay in control of your running. But tip number 9 for me really, as a beginner, try and avoid hills until you've built up your aerobic base. Then finally, tip number 10 is, if you can, even with social distancing, because we can run with other people now, is simply run with someone else or something else. Can you see the cat back there? He was following a couple of walkers, but now he's coming over to say hello to me. But yeah, running with someone else just takes away a lot of thinking about the run, because you'll be chatting, and if you chat whilst you're running, again, you're going to do that perceived effort, because you need to be able to speak, not like full-on sentences like I'm doing now. You obviously need to pause for breath, but if you can do that perceived effort by chatting with someone else at 2 meter distance, then you're going to enjoy the run so much more. And don't forget, I keep saying run, but if you're brand new to it, then it's low effort, low intensity effort, perceived effort. So that could be lots of walking for you to begin with. But that's it, that's my top 10 tips for beginners. There are loads of other tips when it comes to picking a route, but this is a beginner series. So hopefully you found that useful. If you have, please give me a comment. As always, if you've got something specific that you want me to talk about, anything at all, any questions, then please drop a comment. If you're finding this series valuable, if you're finding any of my other videos valuable, please like, subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep getting content from me, and I'll see you soon. And obviously, as always, happy running.